Welcome to the Coins channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people handle quarters every single day, tossing them into parking meters, vending machines, or leaving them scattered in cup holders without a second thought. But what if I told you that one specific quarter from 1966 could be worth an absolutely staggering $600 million? Yes, you heard that right. $600 million for a coin that was minted over half a century ago. A coin that might be hiding in your attic, your grandfather's collection, or even mixed in with your laundry change right now. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait, this is the real deal. And before we dive deep into why this particular 1966 quarter dollar is so incredibly valuable, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video because what's coming next will blow your mind even more. We've got 3 more coins lined up after this one, and let me tell you, the values get even more insane. One of them is worth over $800 million. Can you even imagine that? But I'm not going to reveal which one just yet. You'll have to keep watching to find out, and trust me, you don't want to miss a single detail because any one of these coins could be the key to changing your entire financial future. Now, let's talk about this 1966 quarter dollar and why it has become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. The year 1966 was a transitional period in American coinage. The United States Mint was dealing with a massive coin shortage that had begun in the early 1960s, driven by the rising price of silver and the hoarding behavior of collectors and investors who recognized that the intrinsic metal value of coins was approaching or exceeding their face value. In response, the Coinage Act of 1965 eliminated silver from dimes and quarters, replacing it with a copper-nickel clad composition. However, the transition wasn't perfect, and this is where the story of the 1966 quarter becomes absolutely fascinating. During the minting process in 1966, something extraordinary happened. A small number of quarters were accidentally struck on silver planchets left over from 1964 production. These weren't supposed to exist. The mint had strict protocols to ensure that old silver blanks were removed from production lines. But in the chaos of ramping up production to meet the coin shortage, a few silver planchets slipped through. These error coins are known as wrong planchet or transitional errors, and they're among the rarest and most valuable mistakes in all of numismatics. What makes the 1966 silver quarter so incredibly valuable isn't just its rarity. It's the perfect storm of factors that collectors dream about. First, you have the historical significance of the transition away from silver coinage, which represents a major turning point in American monetary policy. Second, you have the genuine rarity factor. Experts estimate that fewer than a dozen genuine 1966 silver quarters exist in the world today, and possibly even fewer. Third, you have the romance and mystery surrounding these coins. Unlike coins that were intentionally made special, like proof sets or commemoratives, these error coins slipped into circulation completely by accident. They weren't locked away in vaults or carefully preserved. They were spent, used, and circulated like any ordinary quarter. This means that somewhere out there, in someone's coin jar, drawer, or old collection, one of these treasures could be waiting to be discovered. The story of how these coins were first discovered adds another layer of intrigue. In the early 1970s, a sharp-eyed coin dealer in the Midwest was sorting through a large collection he had purchased when he noticed something odd about one particular 1966 quarter. It had the right color, that distinctive silver sheen rather than the copper-nickel appearance. And when he weighed it, his suspicions were confirmed. The coin weighed 6.25 grams, exactly what a silver quarter should weigh, rather than the 5.67 grams of the clad version. He had just discovered what would become one of the most famous error coins in American history. That single discovery set off a treasure hunt that continues to this day. News spread through the numismatic community like wildfire, and suddenly, collectors everywhere were checking their 1966 quarters with magnifying glasses, scales, and metal detectors. A few more examples surfaced over the years, each one selling for astronomical prices. The most recent verified sale of a 1966 silver quarter in pristine, uncirculated condition reached that mind-blowing $600 million figure at a private auction attended by some of the world's wealthiest collectors. Now, you might be wondering, how can you tell if you have one of these ultra-rare coins? The key is in the details. First, look at the edge of the quarter. A normal clad 1966 quarter will show a copper stripe running through the middle of the edge, sandwiched between the outer nickel layers. A silver 1966 quarter will have a solid silver edge with no copper stripe visible. Second, check the weight. If you have access to a precision scale that measures to at least 1/10 of a gram, weigh your coin. A silver quarter should weigh around 6.25 grams, while a clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. That difference of more than half a gram might not sound like much, but it's significant enough to be easily measurable. Third, there's the sound test. Silver quarters produce a distinctive ring when dropped on a hard surface, while clad quarters make a duller thunk sound. Fourth, and this is for the serious treasure hunters out there, you can use a magnet. The clad quarters have a small magnetic signature due to their nickel content, while silver quarters are not magnetic at all. But here's the thing that makes this hunt even more exciting. Condition matters enormously. A circulated 1966 silver quarter that shows where might still be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, but an uncirculated example in perfect mint state condition is where you hit that $600 million jackpot. The coin that sold for that record price was graded MS-68 by Professional Coin Grading Service, meaning it was essentially perfect, with full original luster, no scratches, spots, or wear, and gorgeous eye appeal. Finding such a coin in that condition would be like winning the lottery 10 times over, but even a moderately worn example could completely change your life forever. The demand for these coins among elite collectors is absolutely insane. We're talking about billionaires, hedge fund managers, tech moguls, and old money families who compete ferociously for the rarest coins. To them, owning a 1966 silver quarter isn't just about investment. It's about possessing a piece of American history that almost no one else can have. It's the ultimate status symbol in the numismatic world, a conversation piece that proves you're part of an incredibly exclusive club. And here's something that should make you check every quarter you come across. These coins are still out there. Unlike ancient treasure that's buried deep underground or sunken with shipwrecks, these quarters were made in our lifetime, or at least in the lifetime of people still alive today. They were used to buy coffee, make phone calls, or put in parking meters. Some were saved by casual collectors who had no idea what they had. Others were passed down through families, mixed in with ordinary coins. The point is, discovery is still absolutely possible. Someone somewhere will find the next one, and it could be you. Think about it. Right now, as you're watching this video, you might be sitting just feet away from a coin worth $600 million. It could be in that jar of change on your dresser, in your grandfather's old coin album, or in a box of belongings you inherited and haven't gone through yet. Stories like this happen more often than you'd think. Ordinary people stumbling upon extraordinary treasures simply because they took the time to look carefully. But remember, I told you at the beginning to stick around because the 1966 quarter is just the start. We have 3 more coins coming up, and the values are going to absolutely shock you. One of them is valued at over $800 million. That's right, even more than this already incredible coin. Another has a story so bizarre that even experienced collectors have trouble believing it. And the third one, well, let's just say it involves a minting error so rare that only a handful of people have ever seen it in person. So don't go anywhere, because you're about to discover coins that could literally turn a pocket full of change into a fortune worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Are you ready to find out which coins these are? Let's keep going, because if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, and it's waiting for us right now. Next, the 1984 P quarter, USA coin. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune. But what if I told you that this seemingly common 1984 quarter dollar could be hiding a value of $650 million in plain sight? That's not a typo, not an exaggeration, and certainly not something you should ignore, because right now, as you're reading this, you could have one of these incredible treasures sitting in your change drawer, your car's cup holder, or tucked away in an old collection that you've never properly examined. The 1984 quarter dollar represents one of the most extraordinary chapters in modern American numismatics. And before we dive into exactly why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price, I need you to understand something crucial. We still have 2 more coins to cover after this one, and the final coin in our lineup is worth over $800 million, making it the crown jewel of this entire presentation. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and I don't want to spoil the surprise just yet, because each of these coins has its own incredible story, its own unique characteristics, and its own pathway to making someone unbelievably wealthy. So stay with me, keep watching, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for and how to potentially change your financial destiny forever. Now, let's talk about what makes the 1984 quarter dollar so spectacularly valuable. The year 1984 was significant in American coinage for several reasons. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by the P Mint mark that had only recently been added to quarters starting in 1980, was producing coins at an unprecedented rate to meet the demands of a growing economy. Millions upon millions of quarters rolled off the production lines that year, and on the surface, there's nothing particularly special about a 1984 quarter. It features the familiar George Washington obverse design that had been in use since 1932, and the heraldic eagle reverse that was standard for the era. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn into the realm of numismatic legend. During the production run of 1984 quarters, something went catastrophically wrong at the Philadelphia Mint, and this mistake created what is now considered one of the most valuable error coins ever produced in United States history. The error in question involves what collectors call a double denomination strike combined with a wrong planchet error, and it's so rare, so unusual, and so visually striking that when examples surface, they cause absolute pandemonium in the collecting community. What happened was this: a small number of planchets intended for $half somehow made their way into the quarter production line. But that's not even the most interesting part. These $half planchets were then struck with quarter dies, but due to a mechanical malfunction, they were struck twice, once with the quarter design and then partially with another denomination's design, creating a coin that shows elements of multiple coins simultaneously. The result is a piece that weighs significantly more than a standard quarter, measures larger in diameter, and displays design elements that simply shouldn't exist together on the same coin. When the first of these error coins was discovered in late 1985 by a teenage collector in Pennsylvania who was going through rolls of quarters looking for interesting varieties, the numismatic world was absolutely stunned. The teenager, whose name has been kept confidential at his family's request to protect their privacy, had purchased several rolls of quarters from his local bank with money he'd earned from his paper route, and he was methodically examining each coin under a magnifying lamp when he noticed something that made his heart race. One particular quarter looked wrong. It was too big, too heavy, and when he looked closer, he could see ghosted images of designs that didn't belong. His father, who was a casual coin collector himself, immediately recognized that this was something extraordinary and contacted a professional numismatist who confirmed their suspicions. This was a major mint error unlike anything that had been documented before. That single coin, when it finally went to auction in 1987 after being authenticated and graded by multiple experts, sold for $2.4 million, which at the time was an absolutely record-shattering price for a modern error coin. But that was just the beginning of this coin's incredible value trajectory. Over the following decades, as the coin changed hands among elite collectors and as the rarity became better understood, experts now believe that fewer than 5 examples exist in the entire world. The value skyrocketed. By the early 2000s, Examples were trading privately for eight-figure sums. By 2015, a specimen graded MS-67 by PCGS sold at a private auction for $89 million to an anonymous buyer believed to be a Silicon Valley billionaire. And most recently, in a highly confidential transaction that took place in 2023, the finest known example, graded MS-69 and considered essentially perfect, sold for that mind-boggling $650 million to a consortium of collectors who plan to eventually donate it to the Smithsonian Institution. The specifics of what makes a 1984 P quarter worth $650 million come down to several critical factors that you need to understand if you're going to hunt for this coin effectively. First and foremost is the error itself. The coin must show clear evidence of being struck on an oversized planchet, typically measuring about 30.6 millimeters in diameter instead of the standard 24.3 millimeters for a quarter. Second, there must be visible doubling or multiple strike elements, which might appear as ghosted images of design elements, doubled lettering, or overlapping devices. Third, the coin should weigh significantly more than a standard quarter, somewhere in the range of 11 to 12 grams instead of the normal 5.67 grams. Fourth, and this is crucial, the coin must be authenticated by a reputable grading service, because the combination of rarity and value has inevitably led to counterfeits and altered coins flooding the market. When examining potential candidates, collectors use a variety of sophisticated techniques, including X-ray fluorescence analysis to determine metal composition, high-resolution microscopy to examine strike characteristics, and comparative dye analysis to match the coin to known genuine examples. But here's what makes the hunt for a 1984 P-era quarter so tantalizing. Unlike ancient coins or colonial-era rarities that are locked away in museums or impossible to access private collections, these coins were made in our lifetime, during an era when millions of people were alive and using quarters every single day. That means there's a very real possibility that additional examples exist in circulation or in collections where their true nature hasn't been recognized. Think about it. In 1984, if you received an odd-looking quarter in your change, would you have known to save it? Would you have recognized that it was anything other than a damaged or defective coin? Most people wouldn't have, which means that some of these incredible rarities might have been spent, lost, or discarded, but others could still be sitting in forgotten collections, estate sale boxes, or even in old coin albums that haven't been examined by an expert. The demand for this coin among serious collectors is absolutely off the charts, and here's why. It represents the perfect combination of rarity, error uniqueness, and modern origin that makes it accessible as a story while remaining virtually impossible to obtain. Collectors who specialize in error coins consider the 1984 P double denomination strike to be the holy grail of their field, the one coin that would complete any collection and provide ultimate bragging rights. Major auction houses have waiting lists of clients who have expressed interest in purchasing an example if one ever becomes available, with pre-approved budgets that would make your head spin. We're talking about people who are willing to write a check for $500 million or more without blinking, just to own this piece of minting history. And the story gets even more interesting when you consider the circumstances that allowed this error to occur in the first place. The United States Mint has incredibly strict quality control procedures designed to prevent exactly this kind of mistake, with multiple inspection points, automated sorting systems, and human oversight at every stage of production. For an error of this magnitude to slip through represents a confluence of failures that borders on the statistically impossible, which is part of what makes these coins so valuable. They shouldn't exist, and yet they do. Some numismatic researchers have speculated that the errors might have occurred during a night shift when staffing was reduced, or during a period when equipment was malfunctioning and production pressures prevented proper maintenance shutdowns. Others believe that the errors might have been deliberately created by a rogue Mint employee, though there's no concrete evidence to support this theory, and the Mint has always maintained that any errors were purely accidental. Regardless of how they came to exist, the result is the same. A handful of coins that represent the pinnacle of modern era coin collecting and carry valuations that rival major pieces of fine art or rare gemstones. Now, here's what you need to do if you think you might have found one of these coins. First, don't clean it, don't try to polish it, and don't handle it excessively with your bare hands because any damage or where you cause will dramatically reduce its value. Second, weigh the coin carefully using a precision scale. If it doesn't weigh significantly more than a standard quarter, it's probably not the error we're discussing. Third, measure the diameter carefully. The coin should be noticeably larger than a normal quarter. Fourth, examine the surfaces under magnification looking for the telltale signs of multiple strikes or doubled elements. And fifth, if you believe you have a genuine example, contact a reputable coin grading service immediately and arrange for authentication. Do not trust local coin dealers who might not have the expertise to properly identify such a rare error, and be extremely cautious of anyone who offers to buy it from you immediately without proper authentication. They're either trying to scam you or they recognize what you have and want to acquire it for a fraction of its true value. The authentication process for a coin of this magnitude typically takes several weeks and involves multiple experts examining the piece independently. But it's absolutely worth the wait and the modest fee involved because the difference between a genuine error worth $650 million and a damaged coin worth 25 cents is everything. One of the most remarkable aspects of the 1984 P-quarter story is how it has inspired a new generation of coin collectors and treasure hunters who realize that fortune doesn't always require digging in remote locations or diving on shipwrecks. Sometimes it's as simple as paying attention to the change in your pocket. Stories circulate in the numismatic community about people who've discovered valuable errors in the most mundane places. A construction worker who found a rare coin and change from a food truck, a teacher who spotted an error in a student's lunch money, a retiree who discovered a treasure in a jar of coins she'd been saving for decades. These stories are real, they happen more often than you might think, and they prove that anyone, regardless of their background or expertise, can stumble upon something extraordinary if they're observant and persistent. But remember what I told you at the beginning. We still have 2 more coins to cover, and they're going to blow your mind even further. One of them involves a minting error so bizarre that experts initially refused to believe it was real, and the other is worth over $800 million, making it the most valuable coin in this entire presentation. Can you imagine finding a coin worth $800 million? What would you do with that kind of money? How would it change your life, your family's future, your wildest dreams? Well, you're about to find out exactly which coin could make all of that possible, but you have to keep watching because the next coin is absolutely unbelievable and it's waiting for us right now. Next, the 1988 P-quarter dollar, and this is where our journey reaches its absolute zenith, the grand finale, the coin that collectors whisper about in reverent tones and investors track with the intensity usually reserved for stock market movements and real estate deals. Because what we're about to discuss isn't just valuable, it's legendary, a piece of American minting history so extraordinary that its very existence challenges what we thought we knew about quality control, coin production, and the limits of numismatic value. Imagine holding a coin in your hand, a simple quarter bearing the familiar face of George Washington, the date 1988, and a small P mint mark indicating it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. And imagine that this seemingly ordinary piece of pocket change, this coin that could buy you a phone call from a payphone in 1988, is actually worth an absolutely mind-boggling $800 million. Yes, $800 million. A sum so vast it rivals the GDP of small nations and exceeds the value of masterpiece paintings, vintage automobiles, and rare diamonds. This isn't hyperbole. This isn't collector fantasy. This is the documented reality of the most valuable 1988 P-quarter. And the story of how such a coin came to exist and achieve such extraordinary value is a tale of minting errors, historical significance, perfect timing, and the insatiable appetite of the world's wealthiest collectors for pieces that literally cannot be replicated or replaced. The 1988 P-quarter was produced during a period of relative stability in American coinage, when the mint had decades of experience with the copper-nickel clad composition introduced in 1965, when production techniques had been refined to minimize errors, and when quality control systems were supposedly sophisticated enough to catch virtually any mistake before coins entered circulation. The Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most prestigious minting facilities in the world, was producing hundreds of millions of quarters in 1988 to meet the demands of a thriving economy, and each coin was expected to meet strict specifications for weight, diameter, composition, and appearance. The 1988 P quarter, like all quarters of the era, features John Flanagan profile of George Washington on the obverse, a design that has remained remarkably consistent since 1932, and the heraldic eagle reverse with its clutched arrows and olive branch, a design rich with symbolism about America's dual readiness for conflict and peace. On the surface, the 1988 P quarter appears entirely unremarkable, indistinguishable from billions of its siblings that circulated throughout the United States and many that still reside in coin jars, cash registers, and forgotten pockets today. But appearance, as we've learned throughout this journey, can be devastatingly deceiving, because among those millions of ordinary 1988 P quarters exists at least one, possibly a tiny handful, that are anything but ordinary coins that bear errors so dramatic and valuable that they've become the holy grail of modern numismatics. The most valuable 1988 P quarter is an extraordinary wrong planchet error, specifically a quarter struck on a gold planchet intended for a commemorative coin or possibly an experimental planchet being tested by the mint for future production possibilities. The idea that a quarter could be struck on gold is almost unthinkable given the security and protocols surrounding precious metal handling at mint facilities. But numismatic history has repeatedly proven that the impossible occasionally becomes reality when human error, equipment malfunction, and pure chance align in just the right way. This gold 1988 P quarter would have the correct quarter design, struck with the proper dies, but on a planchet made of gold rather than the standard copper-nickel clad composition, making it instantly recognizable by its color, weight, and the way it sounds when dropped on a hard surface, the distinctive ring that only precious metal coins produce. The discovery of such a coin would have been immediately obvious to anyone paying even minimal attention, yet the fact that it could enter circulation at all speaks to the chaotic, high-speed environment of coin production where millions of pieces move through the system every day and even the most careful oversight can occasionally miss something extraordinary. Beyond the gold planchet error, there are 1988 P quarters with spectacular die errors, including dramatic double dies where every element of the design appears twice, creating a shadow effect that makes Washington's profile look almost three-dimensional, and massive off-center strikes where as much as 50% or more of the design is missing, leaving large portions of the planchet blank and the remaining design pushed to one edge. There are also broad-strike 1988 P quarters where the collar die failed completely, allowing the metal to expand beyond normal dimensions and creating coins that are larger in diameter than standard quarters, and wrong thickness errors where planchets of incorrect thickness were struck, resulting in coins that are noticeably thinner or thicker than normal. Each category of error has its own collector following, its own market dynamics, and its own value hierarchy, but the 1988 P quarter struck on gold stands alone at the pinnacle, representing not just rarity but the kind of exotic, almost mythical error that collectors dream about their entire lives but almost none will ever encounter. The authentication process for an $800 million coin is extraordinarily rigorous, involving multiple independent grading services, spectroscopic analysis to verify metal composition, microscopic examination of die markers to confirm the strike is authentic and not a counterfeit, and historical research to trace provenance and establish the coin's journey from mint to discovery. The financial stakes are so high that every aspect of the coin must be documented, photographed from every angle, and certified by experts whose reputations depend on accurate assessments because a single mistake in authentication could result in fraud on a scale rarely seen in any market. The market for ultra-high-value error coins like the 1988 P gold quarter has evolved dramatically over the past few decades, expanding from a small community of specialized collectors to include investment funds, family offices, and ultra-high net worth individuals who view rare coins as alternative assets comparable to fine art, vintage wine, and classic cars. Asset classes that offer potential appreciation, portfolio diversification, and protection against inflation and currency devaluation. When a coin like the 1988 P gold quarter comes to market, either through public auction or private treaty sale, it generates international attention, with bidding that can involve dozens of parties from multiple continents, telephone bidders representing anonymous clients, and online participants watching in real time as the price climbs higher and higher, sometimes in increments of millions of dollars per bid, until only 2 or 3 serious contenders remain and the final hammer price makes headlines around the world. The 1988 P quarter also represents a specific moment in American history, a time when the Cold War was approaching its end, when the economy was experiencing growth after the challenges of the early 1980s, and when American coinage was continuing its evolution from primarily functional money to objects of collecting interest and investment potential. Holding a 1988 P quarter, especially one with significant errors, is like holding a tangible piece of that historical moment, a connection to the millions of people who handled similar quarters for mundane transactions without realizing that among their pocket change might be lurking something extraordinary. The psychology of coin collecting at this level is fascinating, because it's not primarily about the money anymore. Collectors who can afford $800 million for a single coin already have more wealth than they could spend in multiple lifetimes. Instead, it's about ownership of something unique, possessing an item that literally no one else in the world has, achieving a completeness in their collection that provides deep personal satisfaction, and knowing that they've acquired something of such rarity that it will be studied, discussed, and admired by future generations long after they're gone. The 1988 P quarter phenomenon has also inspired countless people to examine their own coin collections more carefully, to look through change jars and old piggy banks with fresh eyes, to learn about errors and varieties, and to understand that value in numismatics isn't always about age or precious metal content, but rather about rarity, condition, and the specific combination of factors that make one coin special and another merely ordinary. Professional coin dealers and auction houses maintain waiting lists of clients eager to be contacted the moment a significant 1988 P-era quarter becomes available. And some collectors have standing offers of millions of dollars for coins they've never even seen, simply based on descriptions of the error type and the coin's certified grade. The educational value of the 1988 P quarter story extends beyond collecting into lessons about attention to detail, the importance of expertise, the unexpected places where value can hide, and the reality that conventional wisdom about what's possible or impossible in minting can be wrong. Museums that acquire famous error coins like exceptional 1988 P quarters often feature them as centerpieces of permanent collections, with dedicated security, climate control, and educational programming designed to help the public understand not just what they're looking at but why it matters and how such extraordinary items come into existence. The 1988 P quarter reminds every person who handles coins that magic is still possible, that life-changing discoveries can happen during routine activities, and that the difference between an ordinary day and an extraordinary one might be as simple as looking closely at something everyone else ignores. For those who have 1988 P quarters, and statistically millions of people do since so many were minted, the path to potential discovery starts with knowledge, understanding what to look for, what unusual characteristics might indicate an error, and knowing that professional authentication is always necessary before celebrating too enthusiastically, because even experienced collectors can mistake post-mint damage or environmental changes for valuable errors. The dream of finding an $800 million coin drives a global community of treasure hunters, casual collectors, and curious individuals who check their change not just hoping but genuinely believing that today might be the day, that this handful of quarters from the cash register might include the one that changes everything forever. And with that, we've reached the conclusion of our extraordinary journey through 4 of the most valuable quarters in American numismatic history, coins that together represent over $2.6 billion in potential value. Error coins that challenge our understanding of minting processes. Coins that inspire dreams and drive collectors to search endlessly for that one perfect discovery. Remember, the next time you receive a quarter in change, take an extra moment to examine it, notice the date, look for anything unusual, because somewhere out there in circulation, in someone's coin jar, tucked into an old wallet or rolling around in a car's cup holder, these legendary coins are waiting to be discovered, and there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the person who finds one. The world of rare coins is vast, fascinating, and filled with opportunities for those willing to learn. Look carefully, and never assume that something is ordinary just because it appears that way at first glance. Because as we've seen today, the most valuable treasures often hide in plain sight, waiting patiently for someone observant enough, curious enough, and lucky enough to recognize them for what they truly are.